Are we doing it? Are we recording?
We're recording.
Okay.
We're recording. Shelby, welcome.
Thank you.
To the Bonner Breakdown. We kicked this thing off this week, and we had three main focuses of this program. The first is, conversation. We want to talk, right? Have conversations with people.
Mm-hmm.
Discover all the different things that people want to talk about, want to hear about, from nonprofits, businesses, issues, politics. Of course, the housing agency helps sponsor this too, so we want to sometimes talk about housing.
Thank you, BCHA. We've got a lot we can talk about there, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we want to create connection for people. I think it's so easy to lose sight of who people really are because we never actually find out. We just find out where they stand politically, or we stand or on an issue, and we've now boxed them in and treat them as the enemy and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, actually, these are people who have lives and kids and families, and it's good to actually get to know people. So that's part of our process here. And then the last is celebration. We want to create a space where good things happen here. We want to celebrate it and hear the stories of the great things that are happening here. So we've got three main focuses here with the Bonner Breakdown. And we are glad that you decided to come in and hang out.
It's a pleasure to be here with
Yeah,
you.
now you and I have hung out a couple times, chat a little bit on housing stuff, and kind of got to know each other a little bit over the last couple of years. So it's been really nice. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is this mayor of Sandpoint? Shelby Rognstad. Where did you grow up here? Where did you move from?
Yeah, the question of who are you is probably the hardest question for me to answer because I never know what rabbit hole to jump through with that question.
Sure,
but
totally.
I grew up in Lewiston. I graduated from Lewiston High class of 92, so I'm aging myself there a little bit.
Hey, come on,
And,
we're all there. Push that back just a little bit further away. Push it down. Yep. And just
like that. Okay.
That's great.
Yeah, so Lewiston, I was a Bengal. And Bengal Tigers, that's right. I was the high school mascot. I got to wear the Bengal costume for a period of time.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I was, I think I won on my basketball team my freshman year in high school. I won most inspirational players. So I was the biggest cheerleader, not necessarily the biggest athlete. So,
awesome.
So that's, that I think, talks a little bit about me. I was actually the Associated Student Body Vice President my senior year. So maybe that was a precursor.
Yeah,
of
politics started early for you.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Then I went to college at University of Oregon.
Okay.
Which was a sharp contrast to growing up in Lewiston, Idaho.
Boy, wow, what a difference! Because Eugene is a different world.
It's a different world.
I
haven't seen another town quite like Eugene.
Go Ducks. Yeah.
Go Ducks, that's right.
Yeah.
So once you're a Duck, you're unfortunately always a Duck.
My uncle was student body president in Eugene at the U of L one year. I don't remember which year. And my dad is a Beaver. So,
Big trouble.
I am a rebellious son. And I'm just teasing, I'm not. But, I'm a Duck fan while my dad's a Beaver fan. So, we tend to have our annual arguments, which is good.
I didn't know that we shared that.
Yeah,
that's
I
great.
didn't know that either. Go Ducks!
That's cool.
Great. Family's all from Oregon except for my mom. So, well, my mom kind of too, but big Duck fans. But keep going.
Yeah,
you went to U of O.
Went to U of O. For about 2 years, and then after my sophomore year, I took a break and I went down to lived in the Phoenix Valley, which was another sharp contrast.
Wow!
For about a year and a half, and I managed a restaurant down there for much of that time, and then when I came back, I wanted to go back to school, and I came back to the University of Idaho in Moscow. I lived between Moscow and Pullman through that 2-year period while I finished school.
Yeah.
And then came up to Sandpoint. At the time, I graduated high school, or college rather. I got a BA in general studies, and I was interested in everything. And I really approached education from the perspective of, I always felt like I had an entrepreneurial spirit. I was always interested in business in general. But I was really interested and fascinated by the world around me
Sure.
from an early age. And so it was, the first couple years of college, I was like changing my major every 3 months. And then I was like, you know what, I'm going to just like study everything and get the degree that'll allow me to do that. So that's what I did.
Okay.
And rather than prepare myself for a career. And then, when I moved to Sandpoint after college, and I was really attracted here by the lake, of course, the natural world around us, the mountains and the forests, and I was really interested in this idea of permaculture. This was 1999.
Sure. Wow, awesome.
And it's this idea of how can we live more in harmony with nature?
Yeah.
How can we design our human systems in a way to accomplish that?
Yeah.
In our lives as a society and so I was a back to lander there for a couple of years, and I bought 10 acres out in the forest, and I built a little cabin. I wanted to work with my hands, and built a garden, built a cabin, and the trees came from the hillside there where I was up Brenka Loop, and did that for a couple of years, and then I realized, wow, this is kind of lonely out here, and I feel a little too disconnected from society at large. So even though I was working in town part time to pay the bills and pay my mortgage and stuff, but literally just scraping by.
Well, and I love the concept of permaculture. I have a friend who does work in some third world countries teaching permaculture, and they actually have been able to help small 5-acre farms be totally self-sustainable, and just do amazing things in basic micro farming to provide for their community, because they don't have a lot of the resources, and so using permaculture, they're using their land to naturally cultivate stuff all down there. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah,
I love that concept. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you're living here. You're working part time. You're out kind of in the woods a little bit.
Yeah.
Doing the mountain man activities.
That's right.
And so what shifted?
Well, I like many people in Sandpoint, I had 2 or 3 jobs, part-time here, part-time there, and doing everything from cooking and landscaping, and basically is just kind of an assistant to a guy who lived on the lake and had a nice piece of property there. I was a barista for a while, and I always had this idea that I wanted to create this community center that really centered around this idea of how do we create healthy people, how do we create healthy community, and so central to that, in my mind, was food, really nutritious food.
Okay.
I've always been a foodie. I've been interested in trying to figure out how to maximize my own health through diet and exercise and things since I was a teenager. I started meditating when I was 14, and started to get more serious about it when I was, after I moved here. So it was maybe at the age of 25.
Okay.
And I've been a regular meditator ever since. And so that's another part of it. It's the healthy body, healthy mind, and in fact the motto of my restaurant, Common Knowledge, that I opened in 2006 was nourishing mind, body, and soul.
Yeah.
And part of that too, it was also a bookstore. So my soon-to-be wife at that time and I, we were living together out on the mountain cabin there, and we were always looking for an opportunity of how can we realize a greater vision than just sort of having between the two of us 4 part-time jobs around town, and and so I think it was the old it was the old bookstore, the Book Gallery it was called.
Okay.
And I don't know if you remember that, it was before your time.
Yeah, I've been here about 15 years. So.
Okay. Anyway, so it was for sale, and it was just a completely rundown mess of a building with a bunch of old books right across the street from the Sandpoint Senior Center.
Right, yeah.
And it was, screaming deal. This was before the real estate boom had really kind of peaked. And so we got in there at the right time, and were able to purchase that with some help from family, which was really a blessing.
Wow,
and
that's great.
We got in there, and it literally, over the course of 10 years, just kind of piece by piece rebuilt that place and turned it into not just a restaurant and a revitalized bookstore, but really a community center and a community hub. And it kind of, in my mind, especially in those early years, it was kind of, I think it was recognized as a community center for engagement and activism. And
Right. And I think that I remember going in there many times, seeing you behind the counter getting some burritos, or and my wife and I would go in there and have some coffee. Mika loves it. Loved going in there. It was just a great place to get some work done and to hang out, and so great. We love that spot. So
yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so you
I kind of miss it.
Yeah, but we've got great places now.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
well, Sandpoint's changed so much.
So much.
Yeah. When I opened, it was before Evans Brothers. It was before, Charlotte's Food Truck, which kind of the Soul Kitchen spilled out from this. She was our cook there for many years, our chef, I would say. And there were a lot of businesses that kind of came after the fact, and then you can only split a pie so many times, and I think. At the end of the day, it was kind of a tough location. It was really nice being in the
all 3 parking spots or something.
Yeah.
I remember always being like, okay, we're gonna.
You're right. That. And then just the competition continued to increase around town.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, I started getting involved with city politics.
Right.
In 2007. I was on the steering committee for the Transition Initiative, which was the second one in North America at the time. I think maybe Boulder was the first one. I don't know if you remember that movement.
Yeah, I was not involved at all at the time. I was writing mortgages in my business, but yeah.
Yeah, and it was kind of the vision of it was how do we live in a post petroleum world?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Was kind of the idea, and so it was really this grassroots effort to try to figure out how we can kind of pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps and figure out how to rebuild our economy and our society in a way to be more sustainable and more resilient in the face of a dramatically changing global economy and superstructure. So anyway, that's kind of what I was doing at the moment, and I was involved in the community in ways like that. Through that project, I initiated with others in the group the first community garden in Sandpoint, right there on Pine Street. That was
awesome.
one that was kind of one of the memorable projects that came out of that effort, and then I saw that the Sandpoint City was going through a comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I'm gonna just stop real quick because I remember. I actually, now that you mention it, Meek and I went to a couple transition initiative things at the charter school, and I remember it was a very eclectic group, very interesting, very interesting group and people. You just brought that to mind. I remember doing some working groups and things like that. I was part of the Chamber of Commerce at the time, so I was on their executive committee in 2008 and 9, and then stepped down in 2010 when Meek and I got married. But I totally am remembering that now, that transition initiative. So okay, and then we had the big comp plan coming on strong. I remember that was a big effort. We brought in the consultants. Began that process, and that was started in 06, 07?
07.
07,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Ray Miller was the mayor at the time, and I just wrote him a letter and said, hey, I'd love to be on this committee. And, I'd never, had no experience with urban planning or, anything like that, but coming from a kind of a permaculture designer's mind, it's really about integrated systems and how things go together and how to maximize that and eliminate waste or conflict. So it's very similar kinds of pattern recognition and stuff, very similar kinds of mental processes, if you will. So so I thought why not give it a try, and so I did that for a couple of years. That was a 2-year process, that comprehensive plan, and It was a pretty, I think at that point it was probably the most robust citizen engagement effort the city of Sandpoint had gone through.
From what I heard, it was.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, it was really well done,
Yeah.
and it was a huge, change for Sandpoint because we were kind of operating off of, we called it a plan. It wasn't much of a plan.
Right.
I think it was, I don't know if it was 1974 or 1976. It was very old, as old as I am. And yeah, and it was just way outdated and didn't really address how Sandpoint was going to manage growth today and into the future. And,
Right. Well, and there were a lot of consequences developing in housing and in traffic and in everything else that because there was no plan.
That's
Well,
right.
there was a plan, but it was not a thoughtful, maybe up to date plan, right?
That's
So,
right. Yeah.
okay.
Yep. And with a comprehensive plan, you really want to be looking at least 20 years. It's typically considered a 20-year window. You want to be
Right.
looking 20 years into the future, and that's what you're designing for. That's what you're, visioning for.
Did the state start requiring the comprehensive plans long before then, and you just had to have one on the books? Or,
Yeah.
And so, how often? Like, what's the requirement for updates now? Because
I don't
we're
think
about to
they're-
update it.
Yeah, we're updating now at 10 years, and that's sort of a good standard practice.
Industry standard type
That's
of
right.
thing. Okay, great.
Yep.
All right. What was kind of your role in all that?
Well, as a steering committee, so we were, I would say, really two parts. At least three parts. We were looking at gathering data was part of it. So we would come up with suggested policy recommendations, goals, and objectives for the comp plan. Was really an effort to try to ascertain what the public desire is in terms of community vision.
Right. Yeah.
And then we would develop that, and then we would take it out into the community. We would go to events like the Bonner County Fairs, County Fair. We go to the POAC Arts and Crafts Fair. We went to Farmers Market. We went to all kinds of community events like that to try to get as much public feedback as we could, as well as a series of other meetings, public meetings, and to really kind of test and see how we're doing.
Okay,
So once
yeah.
we developed that, ultimately it went to city planning and zoning commission, and they revised it. And then once it was approved through planning and zoning, it went to city council
Okay.
and was approved. So
Yeah.
it was a pretty lengthy process because
It
I think
was.
it kind of it circled back around between planning and zoning and the council for a while. So there was, at every one of those opportunities, there was lots of public input.
That's
and,
right, yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, it was, even though, at that point, I think we had a fairly, I would say, a somewhat divided council in those days.
Yeah.
It ultimately passed with unanimous approval.
Wow.
So I think that
Yeah.
was an accomplishment.
That's a huge accomplishment, and I think that does require a bit of time, I think, in a lot of process, so that all the kinks can get worked out for everybody to have a yes.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's actually a huge win. Wow, that's great. Now, this whole time, I know you just recently were married, and you've been with the same gal the whole time. Is that no?
yeah.
Yes,
So
no?
I
don't know.
yeah,
I don't know much of your history.
Okay.
So yeah.
I
And
was.
if it's too personal, just say, dude, chill.
Okay, that's fine. No, I can go there. Yeah, my first marriage was from I would say from 2000. Let's say I have to think about that. 2003 to 2015.
Okay.
And then I met Katie, my current wife,
Okay.
in 2016. And we've been together. We just got married actually in July. We've
Yeah,
been
that's so
together
fun.
since then,
That's
so,
great. Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah,
That's
thank
awesome.
you. And I
Yeah.
have a 7-year-old daughter, Rosie, and a 10-year-old son, Rowan. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Awesome.
we're doing really good, and we live right down here on the edge of downtown in Sandpoint, and
Yep.
we have a really happy life together.
That's
so thanks.
awesome.
Yeah,
That's
thank
awesome.
you.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, that was one of the reasons, I was divorced and moved up here because my ex-wife and my kids moved up here. And that was my draw to come to Sandpoint, is that, hey, I got family in the area. I want to be near my kids. And so I ended up moving up here. So family's important.
Yeah.
We make a lot of decisions based on, what's happening in our families.
Yep,
And I
that's
think
right.
that's always good to keep in mind, especially in the craziness of how things seem to be going in our discourse nationally and even locally. It's like, oh, we've all got families.
Yeah.
We all got people that we're looking out for, that we're taking care of, that
Right.
we're doing our best to do the best we can. So now you go from being on the comp plan steering committee, seeing that thing through its entire process. When did you sell the bookstore or your common knowledge, the center?
Yeah, 2015, at the end
Okay.
of 2015. So,
Okay.
yeah, and that was really driven by, at that point I had served, after the comp plan, I served a term on the Planning and Zoning Commission,
Okay.
and then I served a full term on City Council,
Okay.
ultimately as council
So
president.
you served on planning and zoning for a season, and then you
For 3 years.
3 years,
Yeah.
and then you stepped onto city council. How many terms?
Well,
Just-
I was appointed by Mayor Ogilvy
Okay.
to fill her vacant seat. She was city midway through her council term and was elected mayor, and so she appointed me to fill her seat. So I did that for 2 years, and then I ran, and then I was elected.
Okay.
I was there for 2 years,
Okay.
and then midway through my term, I ran for mayor.
Okay.
And this was 2015, and so.
All right.
So I knew at that point, I couldn't be mayor and also be a restaurateur.
Okay.
And that was just
A little too much.
yeah, it's too much. Yeah. And so it was also time for me to just make a change. I'd been doing that for 10 years. Restaurant business and retail is just maybe for some people it's a lifelong adventure. For me, 10 years is enough. So
Okay, yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah,
It was
that's
really hard to let it go, but
It's that's one thing about working, whether it's in retail or restaurant. You have a community.
yeah.
You develop relationships in and out of the business, from distributors, suppliers, to the people across the way from you. And so it does become a community. So it's always hard to leave something that's so has its own web.
That's right.
That you kind of live in if
Yeah.
you're in that business. So great. Now, why did you get into politics? What's kind of your driver with all that?
Yeah, well, it's funny. It's like it's kind of a slippery slope story, really. I mean,
Wow,
once
I'm always leery of the slippery
yeah,
slopes,
yeah,
man.
that's right. Once you get involved, people, in public service, we're always sort of like with anything, right?
Yeah.
You're always looking for, who's up and coming. Who do we want to bring onto the team?
Oh man, yeah. Fresh blood.
Yeah, exactly,
yeah, totally,
exactly.
yeah.
So, it's funny, when I was a business owner, and I had the bookstore and cafe there, I ended up, challenging the Planning and Zoning Commission on numerous fronts, from, art on the side of my building to just the right to have a restaurant there in the first place, and then expanding kind of my rights as a business there.
Yeah.
So I ended up, challenging the commission in terms of city regulations, that what was currently allowed there, in terms of use standards. And,
How'd that go?
I got what I wanted, but it was a hard-fought battle, and it
Right.
took years. It was kind of, at first there was this attitude of, not in my backyard, right? We don't want a restaurant. If you're a homeowner next door,
right there,
you don't want a restaurant next door. And so, but this was also in the midst of, the city going through some changes and growing. And the fact is that there had always been a business there, not always been a restaurant there. But, this was a small but substantial change, and so there was some pushback from the immediate neighbors, some of them, and of course the Planning and Zoning Commission at that point was sensitive to that, as they should be.
Sure,
and so it was a push-pull thing, and
Sure.
and they gave me a little bit of leash, and then I kind of filled into that for a year or two. They gave me a little bit more leash, and ultimately the neighbors realized that we're good neighbors after all, and everything was fine and dandy.
Well, and I find that's usually the solution to a lot of the not in my backyards is, at some point, you got to test the theory.
Yeah.
And that's a hard hurdle to cross.
Yeah.
For many people. So okay, so you seem like you have some real strong ideas and objectives when it comes to politics and it comes to outcomes and things that you want to have happen. How would you describe some of your drivers when it comes to what you're doing as mayor and running for office? What are some things that really are your drivers, motivators in this arena?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks. I think that, for me, I want the world to be a better place than, I want to leave the world in a better place than I found it.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think, everybody, I would hope, and I want to believe this, and most of the time I believe this, everybody that runs for public office does it for those reasons. They want to make their community, they want to make their state, their nation a better place.
Yep.
And I certainly operate at that level. But I think that, on a deeper level than that, I've always been more of a visionary and looking maybe farther down the road than maybe other people are willing or comfortable looking. Most people are like either, worried about today or, whether it's, putting food on the table or making sure that their family's needs are met or, their next career step or whatever that may be.
Yeah.
I've always been the kind of
sense.
I've always kind of been the person that thinks, well, what about in 20 years or 50 years or 100 years?
Yeah.
And where are we going on the longer time frame here?
So to me that makes a lot of sense. Hearing you say that, because there's a lot of things that I think that you seem to feel a sense of urgency about that I think other people are like, whoa, slow down. I think that's even creating conflict in the current race, right? I don't know if you've noticed that, but there's like this, let's slow down. You're like, no, we got to move. And I think, and that makes a lot of sense because you're seeing, to the next steps, is that accurate? Am I in the ballpark there? How would you describe that?
Yeah, well, I think maybe I drill down a little further to
Sure,
see
great.
specifically what issues we're focusing on. Are we talking about?
Well, I just noticed, when it came to selection of grass versus AstroTurf, things that we should have taken more time. We need more time. And at the forum last night, and you were there, and Ken and Shannon, everybody was there. So, but that seemed to be a theme.
Yeah.
Right. And
right.
So it just made sense. Like it just started clicking a little bit. Like, oh, okay. So.
Well, if we're to focus on that example, and I don't,
Sure.
if you want to go down this rabbit hole, I'm happy to.
I really could care less. Yeah, let's do it.
But okay, we're gonna do it.
Let's do
okay,
it.
here we go, everybody.
Well,
so
I think this
that,
is. Let me just say, it's
Sure.
a conversation.
No,
so
it's
wherever
fine.
you want to go, it's good.
Okay. What I want to say about that one, though, is there's actually really specific reasons behind that. But
Yeah,
I think
good.
it does circle back around to your intuition that this is about the longer game. Because the situation is, and this is what hasn't really come out in terms of, in the debate, the way that it probably should.
Okay.
And that is that we made a commitment to the taxpayers in 2015 that when we passed this 1% local option tax, the Memorial Field tax, that we would have a completed grandstands and new field turf in 5 years. Okay, we're now 4 years into that, and that tax will be sunsetting next year. We completed the grandstands. In 2016, we created a field, the Surface Review Committee, and that process went from 2016 to 2017. We brought a contractor on board, a consultant rather, that was a landscape architect and experienced in these matters, and helped us educate ourselves as far as, okay, what are the options? So they laid it out on the table for us. This is what synthetic turf would look like. This is what it would cost. This is what grass would look like and what it would cost. And we went through that process for 2 years, thinking that would get us to a point where as a community, we would have an aha moment, and we would realize, okay, grass is the solution, or turf is the solution, or whatever is the solution. And we actually ended up looking at 3 options because
so interesting.
Because then we also looked at a hybrid option, which is part grass, part turf.
Right. Yeah. And so
we went through this whole process, and at the end of the process, we were still right where we started. We all knew a lot more. We knew what it would cost. We knew all the things that were involved. But we were, as a community, we were still in the same place of like, well, it's still 50-50, right?
Okay. Wow.
So, and we could keep studying this issue for 25 more years, I bet you. Yeah. And at the end of the day, we would come down to, okay, it's 50-50, right? To finish answering your question, though, so that's where we kind of ended up in 2017. And then we knew we had the Parks Master Plan coming up. So we thought, okay, let's just put this on hold right now, and let's use the master planning process to help us figure out how we can get there, right?
Okay, yeah.
And so, because then we're rolling into the bigger picture, the other athletic fields and things, because these are part of the equation, right?
Sure, yeah.
And so when we hired Greenplay, brought them on board earlier this year, that was one of the things that we asked of them was, at the end of the day, we want a recommendation from you we want a design concept for a rebuild of our park system, but we also want a recommendation with this Memorial Field piece to help us move forward on this. And we did, by the way, we did get a recommendation from the original contractor, or the consultant. They also thought that we should go with synthetic turf, but they were also, they were not put in the position of being asked for a recommendation, and they could see how volatile this situation was. So they were like, we want to stay, we're just going to do our job and stay out of this political part.
Sure.
Right? So they,
that makes sense.
Yeah. So fair enough. So, but with this effort, we knew that we needed some help making that decision. Okay. And so at the end of the day, they came forward with not just a design concept, but a recommendation with a field surface as well.
Wow, okay.
And that's what the council was considering a couple of weeks ago, was not just the design concept for Memorial Field, but also coming with that decision was a field decision as well, a field surface decision.
Okay. Yeah.
And so in my mind, we had already gone through the due diligence. We had already looked at all the options. We didn't get any closer to a decision as a community. So we needed to take, whenever this decision came up, it's going to be a hard decision.
Yeah.
It's always going to be a hard decision, right? So there's a lot of issues like that where you have half the community feels this way, half feels that way, and those are never easy decisions, and you can second guess yourself all day long. But at the end of the day, those are the kinds of decisions that council people and mayors have to make on a regular basis, or at least be prepared to make.
Yeah, yeah. And I noticed that you don't seem to really be too bothered by making those decisions.
Yeah, for me, it's about.
And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I just think it's you seem pretty comfortable making those decisions.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I think that's an essential component of good leadership, frankly. Okay. And for me, it's keeping my eye on the prize. If my goal is to try to please everybody, and I figured this out early in politics, right? If your goal is to try to please everybody, you're doing the wrong job, right? Because first of all, it ain't going to happen, and the longer and harder you try to do that, you'll realize that it's a fruitless exercise, right?
Yep.
So, but it's more important to make sure you communicate with everybody, hear from everybody, understand the issue as best you can, and the reason that you're put in that role is because the public is trusting you to make the best decision for the community.
Right.
So, so I feel like if I can get to that place where I'm educated and informed about the topic, and I feel like I've addressed it with the public broadly and have engaged the public on an issue, once I come to a decision, then that part in the end it's really kind of easy, right?
Right.
And I can stand, with confidence and security in that decision and move forward. So,
do you ever feel like one of the comments that I've seen come up and have heard is that there's a sometimes that there can be a driver, like you can drive an initiative or drive a topic or drive some things. Do you feel like you're a driver, like you get kind of like a dog on a bone type of thing with certain topics or issues, or do you feel like you're, I just sense that there's a sense that you kind of try and drive certain things pretty hard and other things I don't know, but I'm just curious about that because that's one of the comments that comes up, from time to time that you like to drive issues pretty hard. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that there are moments when that is called for. In leadership,
Sure.
there are moments when that is called for.
Yeah.
And what I've seen is that I think we have this history. If you look back at kind of Sandpoint's history, and this is probably a human nature thing, right? I mean, nobody likes to deal with difficult conversations, difficult decisions.
Oh.
We love to just procrastinate
Yeah.
and kick it down the road, leave it for the next person, that kind of thing. And so I think we've kind of had a history of that. A great example of that is our wastewater treatment plant, right? This thing is 80 years old. Even the new parts are, 40 years old. It's an issue of massively deferred maintenance that the city hasn't dealt with for decades, right? And understandably so. It's not a fun thing to deal with. These wastewater treatment facilities are extremely expensive, right?
Yeah.
It's a tough pill to swallow for taxpayers, right? But at the end of the day, it's one of those things that you have to, at some point you have to pull your bootstraps up and just get her done.
Yeah.
And I feel like for whatever reason, I think I do have the kind of personality that doesn't sit well with kicking the can down the road.
Yeah,
and
it doesn't seem like it. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
sit well with just letting decisions not, kind of fester and not get made, and letting things just kind of continue not being dealt with. And so, I definitely see myself as the kind of candidate, the kind of leader that likes to address the issues that need to get addressed.
Yeah. Okay.
So you have said that you see housing as being a major issue that Sandpoint, Bonner County, and this region has to deal with. What do you see as being the issue with housing?
Yeah, well, great question. There's a few different ways we could approach this. I would say that here's the reality: is growth is happening. Growth is coming to Idaho. It's coming to North Idaho, and it's especially coming to Sandpoint in Bonner County. And we've seen that over the last couple of years. We grew over 5% in 2017, over 3%, 3.5% last year. And that trend is likely going to continue. And so,
well, we just got rated the third cheapest ski resort town in America.
Right.
So,
exactly.
And no flashing signs saying move here.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we live next to this gem of a lake that's
amazing.
Is just a treasure,
Yeah.
absolute treasure. So the quality of life here is so high. And while it's diminishing, many other places that have been popular around the world as we experience, dramatic changes in everything from, economics to climate change to, immigration, migration, I should say, human migration around the planet. These major changes that kind of we're in the midst of, and it, as that happens, Sandpoint becomes even increasingly an ideal place where you can, live, work, raise a family, and that we have such a high quality of life, and it is our greatest asset.
Yeah.
And so people are going to come here, and whether we want them to or not. And so the reality is, how do we maintain those things that we love so much about our community?
Sure. Yeah.
And the solution is to manage that growth in a way that we can preserve what we value, and not allow ourselves to just get run roughshod by the people who have the most money, right? And so that's why we're doing, that's why a comprehensive plan is so important.
Right, yeah.
And that's why addressing the issue of housing is so important, because it also relates to, when we talk about housing, we're talking about, how can we continue to afford to live here? We're talking about affordable housing. As that growth continues to happen, it will invariably drive prices up, and it really it comes down to
that's not even up for debate at this point. Yeah.
But if we can manage that growth, and if it comes down to a supply versus demand issue, if we were to build a wall around the city boundary right now and say we're not going to allow any more people in here. Then it just becomes a game of whoever has the most money can afford to live in Sandpoint, but only if we manage that growth and allow it to happen, can we bring more inventory onto the market, and then there can be something for everybody, or at least as much as possible. And so we want to obviously keep housing available and affordable for the people that live here, and particularly for people, young people, people on fixed incomes, the elderly, and the working class, and everybody else. We want it to be, Sandpoint's always been a community of a diverse mix of people.
Yeah, totally.
Economically, and we want to maintain that into the future. So,
obviously I'm a housing advocate. We work with local families to get local families into houses, single moms, parents working 2-3 jobs, with 4 kids. And they love it here. They want to be here. They could move to Coeur d'Alene. They could move to Spokane, where things might be a little less expensive for them to live, but that's not where they want to be. And I think that if the pricing continues to move in the direction that it's moving, we will remove choice from people that would love to be here but can't be here, and we will begin to select out all of the people that work here. Quest is already bringing in 2 vans a day of people. Kodiak is bringing in 2 vans a day of workers from Rathdrum and Post Falls, and so we've got to find some ways. So what are solutions?
What Bonner County Housing Agency is doing
Community.
Bonner County Community Housing.
Bonner Community
Housing
Come
Agency.
On, yes.
I'm working on it.
It's okay. That's why we just say BCHA, because nobody gets it right. It's all good, dude.
Well, that's an important part of the solution, and I think there's, this is a very complex problem. It requires a comprehensive solution.
It is complex, yes.
So that's one solution. The classic, Section 8 subsidized housing, where we can accommodate that, is also a part of the solution.
Yeah.
The comprehensive plan that we're going through right now is an important part of the solution, because so much of this relies on what our land use regulations and policies are in terms of how do we accommodate that growth. Because what we did in 2007 or 2009 rather, with the 2009 comp plan, that's so significant that I don't know if people really appreciate, is that we allowed accessory dwelling units by right. That was, as far as like one item that probably had the greatest impact in terms of affordable, available housing and created
rentals.
That's right. Right off the bat, we created, probably 57 or so accessory dwelling units that were many of them were just illegally operating before. People just built them and did them. Converting their garage out back into a living unit when it wasn't allowed. But now, we without changing, without creating any developments anywhere, without creating multi-family development complexes anywhere, we just immediately created 57 new units essentially. And so that was really significant. The other thing we did in 2009 is we allowed much more density, particularly in the multi-family zone, so greater density on the same lot size. But then we also reduced the lot size. There were a lot of lots around town that were under the minimum 7,500 square feet, and we brought that down to 5,000 square feet. So it all of a sudden made a lot more lots developable. I've got one right over here on Pine Street. I have a 4,500 square foot lot that technically was illegal. You couldn't build there, right? Now it's my home. Those are the kinds of things that can happen through the comprehensive plan. The other thing that can happen is that the plan can have the community can develop through the comp plan a shared vision of how we want to see Sandpoint grow. One thing that we've got to get over, I think, as a not just a community but as a society, really. I mean. Is this idea that, this 12,500 square foot lot, single family home with a picket fence, we're not going to continue to be able to have that kind of housing and have it be affordable. It's
Yeah.
not. It's simply not possible.
For both realms. Yeah.
You can have that kind of house, but
Yeah.
you're going to have to pay for it, and it's
Yeah.
not going to be in the 200s, and hopefully if you're lucky, it'll be in the 300s.
Well, we know the units off of Walnut, the smaller, those 10 units that are they're off a division. I mean, those are over 200,000.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just we're already at a price point
Yeah.
that is difficult. I just wrote an article for the Association of Realtors, and just doing the research, and according to HUD's numbers, family of 4 in Bonner County is where you start to be able to afford any homes over 200,000. Like, you have to have an income that can provide for a family of 4, which is close to $50,000 a year, to buy a home in the city of Sandpoint that's at $200,000. Well, we've got 2-bedroom, 1-bath units going up for more than that now. So as far as within the city of Sandpoint, coming up with creative solutions to deal with the housing issues, some ships have already sailed.
Yeah.
Right, we can deal with lot size, we can deal with that kind of stuff, and it will bring some things down. And this is why I'm excited about the comp plan with housing, because I think that there are some things in some other communities that are doing great things to try and provide stuff for teachers, for specifically like emergency responders, people who work in unique fields that the city really needs to have on hand in order for the city to be successful, including working with large manufacturer employers, things like that.
Yeah.
And of course, we've talked about this many times in the community land trust option, which is a whole nother show, actually. And I'm going to be doing a whole show.
Oh, good. I was hoping we could do a show on that, because I can talk. I know we can talk for a long time just on this issue. So, and even the innovative ideas. That the land trust is one solution.
Which is, let me just say this one thing, because every time I see the word land trust come up online or discussed online, people immediately equate it with an easement, or they equate it with what Coucil Land Trust does. And community land trusts are very different. They actually provide ownership opportunities for people who want to buy homes, but it costs far less. So because of the way that the development works. So we're actually talking about developing homes for people to buy, and they get to own those homes, and someone at some point invests money in the land, and it stays in the land, whether it's a donation or a purchase or whatever that is. So I just get the basic out of the way there, because it is confusing, because it feels like a land grab, or it's some type of thing where it's not equitable. But the community land trust is probably one of the most equitable ways I can see to get affordable properties for sale, for people to own and live in a community that's moving the direction we're moving.
Yeah.
So,
and it works all over the world, and
it
even
does. It does, yeah.
Even in Idaho, there's an example I understand down in McCall right now. And even in Rathdrum, there was a private model that exists down there as well.
And
it's not a land trust,
there's
but
one in
it's the same.
Spokane. There's one in Leavenworth. There's a bunch around.
Okay.
So
we're not reinventing the wheel here.
No, not at all.
And the other thing about a land trust that's really cool is it can be both for home ownership, say like first home buyers, for example, or any home buyer. And you can focus it on, if a particular group that you want to try to, that you want to try to meet, whether, like you said, teachers or, for corporate housing, or, we have companies in town that are growing and they're concerned about how do they, provide for and maintain a workforce, and housing is one of their biggest challenges, and they can so it's very much in their interest to try to help solve this problem.
Sure.
And so they can provide be a player in this idea of a land trust to bring the cost of the housing down for their workforce. So that can be part of the solution too. And then the other thing is, so it can be both for the home ownership market, but it can also work in the rental market.
Yeah, it all depends on how you set it up. And for us, we work a lot with Idaho Housing and HUD, and so whenever we're always looking at how can we get funding through those sources, and so those are all home ownership opportunities with land trusts for the most part. So that's where always my mind goes. I don't consider land trusts and rentals. I haven't thought a whole lot about that, but it is absolutely doable. Let's switch gears a little bit because you got to get going. I got to get going. We've had a wonderful conversation. It's been good. Couple final questions for you. What is your biggest challenge that you see for yourself in the next, if you become mayor? What's the biggest challenges that you see coming up for you if you get elected on Tuesday?
Wow, that's a hard question. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what you don't know.
I don't say that very often, but
oh wow, I got it on tape. So then I think the other side of that is what are the big victories that you're looking to have if you're reelected? Like what's kind of your vision? What do you want to see happen?
Yeah, well, again, I
you
feel like
mentioned-
a broken record
yeah.
with the comp plan and the capital improvement plan that's underway. We were just kicking off the transportation multimodal master plan. So, all of this is really driving what this city is going to look, feel, and function like for the next 50 years or more. So, this is like such a monumental effort, and so making sure that process is done right and it's successful. I think is the most important thing right now, and I'm very passionate about that. I'm kind of, as you are probably gathering by now, I'm a little bit of a planner by nature, and I'm a visionary by nature, and so this kind of work is really exciting for me. I love community engagement. I love getting the public excited about these kinds of opportunities. Recall, I was the freshman high school.
That's right. Yeah.
Basically, I was like the cheerleader from the bench there. So. I kind of feel like I'll be doing that through this planning effort, is really trying to rally the community behind this planning effort to make sure that we have a community-driven plan that we end up with.
Yeah.
So I think that's the most significant thing, because it's really going to drive the success of Sandpoint in every way into the future.
Sure.
But I think focusing on quality of life, economic vitality is huge. I'm really proud. To finish that thought real quick. So, again, we need to continue to diversify the economy and create opportunities.
Sure.
Higher paying wages. We talked about housing and affordability, but the other side of that coin is it's not all about how do we make housing cheaper. It's, well, how do we make wages higher?
Right, and we've had we've done some housing forums, hosted them in the past, and we've come up with just amazing opportunities with employers for all of these other ways that they can help offset costs, so that the housing burden isn't so high, and I think there's so much room to come up with creative opportunities for local companies to lay a hold of. It is difficult living in a higher priced area, and having manufacturing and stuff that have international market pressures like Lighthouse and other, like they've got to produce a product at a certain price, and so I think there are some inherent challenges, but we have jobs. So talking about your vision for the future, you've mentioned comp plan, you've mentioned looking at diversifying the economy, looking at a lot of different ways to really increase our livability here, and keeping those people here that want to be here, even if it's difficult to afford, trying to create opportunity for that. So why should people vote for you?
Well, and now you're ready for the stump speech. Here it comes.
Dude, yeah, it's recording.
Okay. Well, I'm the candidate with experience. I have the most experience of any of the candidates. I am the candidate who has shown time and again that I have the courage and the fortitude to stand up for our values and make difficult decisions, even when it's uncomfortable. Whether we're talking about, you brought up the whether we're talking about planning, whether we're talking about turf, there's been a lot of instances where I feel like I've had to, take the difficult position and the issues that we're going to continue to face, that we face today and will continue to face in the future are going to be challenging issues.
Yeah.
And Sandpoint is going through a lot of change because of the growth and because of the global climate around us, the global changes that are impacting us here locally. And so these are really significant changes that are going to be difficult to solve, and they're going to take wisdom, they're going to take experience, and they're going to take courage to face those challenging issues.
Okay.
So I think that's what sets myself apart from my opponents. And I know we're all good people. I know we all love our community, and I know we all have a lot to bring to the table. But that's how I'm different.
Okay, cool. How was this for you?
It was great.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
good.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah. We'll be doing more. I think one of the things that we're always looking for is conversations that make us think. And we are in no way, one of the things that I send out, I sent you the guest packet, the little PDF about what to expect and stuff. I don't know if
think
you
I
got
missed
that.
it. Was that
Yeah,
when
it was
you sent
attached. It was attached to one of your emails.
Was
But
it today?
no.
Oh.
Yeah, first time on the
early
initial,
on.
Yeah, early
Okay,
on.
okay.
It was a while ago.
Okay.
But one of the things that we talk about is how we really want to get to know you, right? Like that's our goal here is to get to know. I feel like I got to know you a lot better through this process. So I appreciate you coming in.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good. So like Ken, I've known for
pleasure.
years, and I had told everybody, hey, Ken and I are friends. We've known each other for years, so it's a very laid back, conversation. This is good. November 5th, Tuesday, people need to go vote for mayor, and you're one of the candidates on the ballot, and we appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, Chris.
All right.
It's a pleasure speaking
Yep.
with you.
Awesome.
All right.
All right. Thanks.